Oh, thank you. Okay, great. Well, we'll call to order this meeting of the Finance Committee for August 1st, 2023. Bill, can you do the roll call, please?
Wilkos,
Here.
Jackson,
Here.
Nairo,
Here.
Lorman,
Here.
all present.
Okay, great. We're all here. First item of business is the minutes of the July 18, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes as circulated? Hearing none, the minutes as circulated for the July 18, 2023 Finance Committee meeting are approved. Next is the audit of the bills to be paid. Bill, do you have any updates for us?
No updates tonight.
Okay, great. And Alder Wokus has the copies over there to sign. Can I get a motion to approve the audit of the bills?
I will make that motion.
Thank you.
This is Jackson. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the audit of the bills to be paid signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to resolutions, we have two. The first one is Resolution 2023-42, amending the 2023 capital project budget to reallocate funds for access control at the Middleton Operations Center, or MOC.
This is Wilkos. I make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-42, amending the capital project for allocation of funds
Okay, thank you.
to reallocate funds, I guess.
This is Jackson. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion. I would just note that I think key scan access control is an important action to ensure the public that we're taking steps to avoid situations like the recent one. I did have some questions about how we will be able to monitor access and whether there will be any other way to get into the building, because if it's going to be like City Hall, I still have a key to get in the building. So can anyone answer that question?
I guess take the second part first. There will also be a separate item for rekeying of City Hall as part of the conversation we had at the end of last year with election security for some building security upgrades. That'll be forthcoming at some point in the next couple of weeks once we get the final design from the architects. So that would have keyed entry to all of the kind of main points of entry in this building. I don't think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, there would be no other hard keyed access points, but if there are, we would maintain a log of the keys for any hard access that's not electronic fob.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 2023-42, amending the 2023 capital project budget to reallocate funds for access control at the MOC signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to resolution 2023-43, authorizing the use of general contingency for costs to intervene in 2023 Madison Gas and Electric rate case.
This is Wilkos. I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-43, authorizing the use of general contingency for the costs to intervene in the rate case.
Thank you.
Jackson. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 2023-43, authorizing the use of general contingency for costs to intervene in 2023 Madison Gas and Electric rate case signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to bids and quotes. We have just one. Accept quote from Integral Building Systems in an amount of $24,101 for key scan access control at the Middleton Operations Center. And this comes to us from the Director of Public Works.
Madam Chair, just point of information, this item we would like to have subject to City Council approval.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not City Council, City Attorney approval.
City Attorney approval. Okay. Who would like to move approval subject to City Attorney approval?
I'll approve.
Thank you. Anyone want to second that?
I will second.
Thank you. Discussion. So I understand we received an email from Matt Fleming. Can you describe the changes?
Yeah, again, just basically adding in the was the equal benefits language into the contract with this company.
Okay. And I had asked prior to the meeting about the equal benefits language because it seems this comes up a lot. And I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that this well-intentioned provision that we put into contracts is having the intended effect. So
Yeah,
They certainly will be. This one was reviewed by Mr. Fleming some time ago before that discussion. But I wanted to make sure this was covered without controversy because it obviously belongs in all contracts with contractors like this one.
great, thanks.
And Madam Chair, as a point of information, is a separate item unrelated to this, but talking about contracts in general, we are looking at putting together a template for public service related contracts that are not public works specific, because I think that's been part of the issue before. We were using a template from Public Works, but it might be best for some of our other more professional services to have just a standard template with that language already pre-reviewed by the city attorney in there, and that should ease the ability to have that sent out to contractors. They can fill in the pertinent information, but it's on a standard template that we've already pre-approved.
Great, that
That
sounds
would
like,
be a great improvement.
yeah, sounds like a way to use technology to be more efficient. So thank you for that. All right, any further discussion?
Larry, can you give me a 30-second overview of that so I understand what that means?
Well, the city has adopted an ordinance, gosh, it's a good while ago now, I can't remember when, which requires that when we enter into contracts with private companies wishing to do business with the city of Middleton, that they have, that they tell us that they have in place a policy to treat all of their own workers the same as the city would, which includes benefits for people of different sexual preferences
Oh,
and
okay, so
people like
diversity,
that.
equity,
So-
inclusion language.
yeah, and
Okay.
so we've had
Good.
standard language in the city engineering contracts for a long time to do that. We're catching up here with the non-public works contracts and obviously with the template in place, this will become less and less and perhaps never an issue in the future. We can hope anyway.
Okay, so a vendor like this then just simply says, yes, we do, and they would provide it on request.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Good question. Thank you for asking it. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of accepting the quote from Integral Building Systems in an amount of $24,101 for key scan access control at the Middleton Operations Center, subject to city attorney approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to miscellaneous, we have 3 items. First one is review of city's investment policy. Bill.
Yeah, thank you. The city has a number of financial policies. As you know, we've been in the process this year of going through and reviewing those. And the city's investment policy includes a provision that it should be reviewed by the Finance Committee and Council at least once every 3 years. The policy was last reviewed and approved on April 20th of 2021. So we wanted to bring this forward. There are not any recommended changes to the policy language itself at this time, just an update to the list of authorized public depositories, which is an appendix. We did want to take this opportunity, given the new members on the Finance Committee and Council, to just discuss some of the highlights of the policy and answer any questions, or if there's any feedback or direction, we can certainly incorporate that. This policy was drafted based on a model policy from the Government Finance Officers Association, which has a number of model policies and best practices in several areas of municipal finance. The policy identifies 3 general objectives, and those objectives in order of priority are: number 1, safety. That first and foremost, because we're investing public funds, the primary goal is safety of our principal. So by both the policy as well as state statute, we're very limited in the types of things that we can invest in as a municipality. We do not have any investments in stocks, equities, mutual funds. It's primarily limited to bank deposits, certificates of deposit, treasuries, and certain other federal agencies and similar investments. The second objective then is liquidity, and that is to ensure that we have availability of funds. So the second objective is to make sure that as we invest items for a certain period of time, that we have adequate cash flow. And it is our policy to hold items until maturity. So we are not trying to time the market to buy something, anticipating that the price will go up and then we would sell it. When we make our investments, our intent is to hold it until maturity. So we're making those investment decisions based on our cash flow projections and ensuring that we have adequate funds to meet the needs of the city. And then the third objective, after those first two are met, are to retain a market rate of return based on the current environment and economic situation. So again, we're not trying to time or beat the market, but we are trying to earn a fair rate of return for our policy based on the safety and liquidity. The policy goes through and discusses items such as the standards of prudence, ethics and conflicts of interest. For delegation of authority, the authority to manage the city's investment portfolio has been delegated to me as the city's finance director. As part of the policy, I provide updates quarterly to the finance committee and obviously operate under the direction of the council and the city administrator. We maintain a list of authorized public depositories, which we'll get to in the appendix here. I think one thing that's important to note about our policy related to safety and custody, two things that we have in place to ensure the security of our investments is for marketable securities, if we work through a broker to purchase a treasury note or purchase a CD on the open market, that broker is not holding the investments for us. They are held by a third party that just acts as our custodian, and we're using US Bank for that service. So we always make sure that there's an independent third party that are holding those investments in the city's name, which provides a higher level of protection than if items were held directly by a bank or by our broker. The other thing that we have in place is that we have a requirement that if we have a certificate of deposit, for example, that be fully either insured through the federal FDIC insurance program or fully collateralized. So if we have bank deposits, they are either providing other pledged collateral, sometimes they'll provide a letter of credit. And we also take advantage of something called the CDARS program, where we would invest, say, $1 million with Capital Bank, for example, and then they would take that, and through that CDARS program, those are automatically placed in increments up to $250,000 at other participating banks, so that we always have full FDIC insurance coverage on those investments. The authorized investments, and this is primarily governed by state statute, but federal government bonds and securities, state and local government bonds and securities, certificates of deposit, and we've further limited our policy to say certificates of deposit of maturities no more than 5 years. Commercial paper, which is short-term private notes, that is an eligible item in our policy. We do not currently own any commercial paper. We have not invested in that recently, and I don't really see advantages in this current market environment to be investing in that. Likewise, we don't have any repurchase agreements currently. We do have investments in investment pools, the primary one being the state of Wisconsin local government investment pool. The policy also sets some general goals in terms of diversification and maximum maturities. When the policy was drafted, we avoided setting specific targets, such as X amount shall be invested in the local government investment pool, or no more than 25%, for example, with a particular institution. We wanted to provide flexibility, both because the city's cash flow amounts vary pretty significantly throughout the year when we get tax deposits in, and then we have money that's paid out during the year, and also to be able to take advantages of differences in the market, that at certain economic situations, bank CDs may be offering more attractive rates. Other times, federal agencies or treasuries may be more attractive, so we wanted to provide some flexibility there. But diversification is something we look at, and that's something that we report every quarter when we prepare the investment reports. As far as performance standards and benchmarking, we, as part of our quarterly reports, report the 3-month treasury note as well as the local government investment pool as a frame of reference for how the market is doing. Our policy has a longer term, and generally in a typical interest rate environment, the longer you go out for investments, the higher the interest rate you'll obtain. We are not in that typical environment right now where short-term rates have continued to move up. Longer-term rates have lagged. So we actually are seeing higher interest rates in the LGIP and the 3-month treasury right now than some of our longer investments that were invested out 3, 4, or 5 years. That said, we are not moving all of our money into immediate or short-term funds because we do want to provide some protection that if interest rates do go down in the future, that we have some longer-term investments that continue to earn a reasonable rate of return. And for example, if we were to look back 2 years ago, interest rates were very close to zero, and the city's portfolio was still earning about 1% because we had some longer-term investments there, which helped bring some income into our budget. If we look at our portfolio now, which we'll get to with the next item, our average rate of return on our portfolio is about 3.38%. That is lower than what you would get if you just went to the local government investment pool today, but that's because we have some of those longer term investments that were purchased back when rates were around 1%. And until those mature, we're continuing to earn that rate of interest. As investments mature, we'll go out, purchase additional items, and we've purchased some items that have been in the 5% plus range when things have come up for reinvestment. And so over time, that'll bring up the yield in our portfolio. But I'd say that part of the intent with the policy, as I had mentioned, it's security first, liquidity second, then the rate of return. And I would say within that rate of return, our goal is to provide as stable an income stream as possible so that we don't have big swings to our budget where interest rates are up and we might have a good year with interest and then see that crash the following year. We want to have some stability and having those 3 to 5 year investments helps provide some of that stability for us. The attachments or the exhibits to the policy, Exhibit A is just the references from state statute for allowable investments. And then Exhibit B is the list of authorized public depositories. So we have a number of different banks that are on our approved list currently. We also have listed for informational purposes the broker that we've been using, our investment pools, local government investment pool, and the WISC investment class. And then the groups that we are working with, Associated Trust Company is our paying agent on our debt, and US Bank is our custodian for holding those securities that we purchase. Generally, when we have funds available to invest and we're interested in CDs, we'll send out something to maybe 5 or 6 different banks that we have on our list, and we'll ask for a quote with rates and what they'll provide for collateralization. And then based on that, we'll make a decision and place funds at the best available rate. So we want to ensure that we have some competition there. And then within that, we want to have some diversification so that we don't have all of our CDs with one bank. We have a mix of some treasuries, some federal agencies, some CDs, and then within those CDs that they're split up among different banks. So with that, I'd be open for any questions on the policy or the city's approach to investing.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill?
I just have a comment. I've been working with Middleton for many years, and I think I can say with complete confidence that the city's investment policy has never, ever had a loss during those years. And when you look at the list of prohibited investments on page, I guess it's 16 of your packet or page 4 of the agreement, there's a reference to collateralized mortgage obligations. This was a time back in the late aughts, like 2008, a number of municipalities and school districts lost millions of dollars by investing in these alternative things, thinking they were as secure as anything. And fortunately, Middleton was not one of those places. And it's a good thing. So yeah, we've been served well by this policy and by its predecessors. And, obviously we're not getting the best rate of return, but since that's not the primary reason we have the policy, it's still producing reasonably well.
Great, thanks for that insight, Larry. That makes me wonder, does any municipality invest in crypto? And is there a reason why we might want to add cryptocurrency to the list of prohibited investments? Not that Bill's out there.
I certainly think that would be a reasonable item to add as a prohibited investment. Yeah, I have no plans to invest in crypto. In some of the conferences I've been to, there's been some discussion about that, and generally the recommendation is stay away from it. So I would have no problem adding that just to make it explicit that that's not something that we would be investing in.
Thank members.
I completely agree.
Right.
I totally agree also.
Okay, so who would like to, you need our approval or our recommendation that council approve the policy?
Yeah, it is on the council under the consent agenda. So I think there could be a recommendation from finance to make that addition and then make that noted at the council level as well.
Okay, who would like to make a motion? And I guess the motion would be to approve the investment policy and the list of authorized public depositories and brokers with the addition of cryptocurrency to the prohibited investments in section 7G.
Okay, I can give a shot at that.
Okay.
Make a motion that we approve the city investment policy based on the Government Finance Officer Association best practice sample as stated in Bill Burns' summary here, and that we add to section G, 7G, prohibiting investments in cryptocurrency.
And approving exhibit B.
And yes, and approving exhibit B. Thank you.
Okay, that's the motion. Who would like to second?
This is Jackson. I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion? Anybody have it to read back? The motion to approve the, can you state it again?
Okay, I'm going back to, I'm just reading it off.
Sure.
Back to the, motion to approve the city investment policy based on the Government Financial Office Association, GFOA, best practices and sample policy. And summarizing, the Middleton policy is last reviewed and approved by the Common Council in April 2021. And that we further amend section 7G to prohibit the city from investing in cryptocurrency. And we approve the list of Appendix B, August 1st of, I guess, additional financial institutions.
Okay. Exhibit B. Okay. So that's the motion we're voting on. We've had a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to miscellaneous item number 2, update on second quarter 2023 investment reports.
Okay, and this is our quarterly investment update. So there is no action needed on this item. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Just to identify highlights, we have the weighted average yield graph on the first page that shows the city's weighted average yield of its portfolio in red. Over the last quarter, that average rate of return or yield has been relatively constant at about 3.38%. The blue and green lines show the short-term rates for the local government investment pool and the 90-day treasury bill. So as I had indicated, we're in an environment where short-term rates have continued to move up, although the rate of that change has started to slow down over the last 3 quarters. But the Federal Reserve has been continuing to ratchet up short-term interest rates, and that's driving the increases in those those items. We are benefiting from those in the funds that we have at the LGIP, as shown in our portfolio, as well as our money market accounts. We still have a large portion of our investment portfolio that is invested longer term in CDs, treasuries, and federal agencies. The yields on those, when we look at the average yields, those remained lower because a number of those investments were purchased when interest rates were lower. And just a couple of years ago, they were significantly lower at 1% or below. What we've been trying to do is maintain our diversification. So we can see on the bottom of this first page, the graph in the bottom right shows the split with the different institutions and types of investments that we have. And on the bottom left, it's showing our investments by their maturity. So we have, out of our $71 million portfolio, about $15 million that's in immediately available funds, such as money markets that are considered available as cash. And then another 25% up to a year, 23% up to 2 years, and 16 and 11, and then 3% at 3, 4, and 5. So we have shifted the maturities of our portfolio to be a bit more short-term, helping us take advantage of those interest rates that are available in 1 to 2 years. That was also done primarily for liquidity purposes because we have several large construction projects underway right now, including Pleasant View Road. So we are going to be drawing down the amount that's in our investment portfolio as we make payments on those projects. We're also at a point in the year where we're naturally drawing down our balances, and we typically reach our lowest cash flow point in November, just prior to starting to receive property tax collections in December. So as investments are maturing and we have funds available, we're looking at investments that we can purchase to take advantage of higher rates. And then I anticipate that we'll have additional funds coming in with those tax collections in December that we should be able to further take advantage of the higher interest rates that are out there. Page 2 is a listing of all of the individual investments that we have purchased in our policy, providing that for disclosure purposes. If you look through that list, you'll see quite a mix based on when items were purchased. So there are some items in here that are earning 5% or more that we've purchased recently. We still have some longer term investments that are out there that are earning 1% or even some that are below 1%. And as I had mentioned in the policy discussion, our practice is to hold those investments to maturity. So we are not trying to time the market and sell those. As investments mature, we'd be looking at the best available option and choosing to reinvest at that time. So I would anticipate that our yield on our portfolio will remain relatively constant the next couple of months. I think we'll start to see some increases as both some of these investments mature and are able to reinvest. And then certainly towards the end of the year where we get some more short-term money in from tax collection, then we can put that in short-term investments to take advantage of those short-term rates. Again, be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill? All right, hearing none. Thank you for that. We'll move on to the final item of business, and that's miscellaneous item number 3, update on second quarter general fund financial reports.
Yeah, thank you. And this item, again, no action needed. This is just for informational purposes. We've included for the general fund the actual year-to-date numbers for revenues and expenditures through the end of June. For the projections, I have gone through on some of the revenues and updated projections based on the history after 6 months where we have adequate information. On the expenditure side, most of the projections are still showing the budget. As part of the budget request process, we've asked departments to provide their projections of where they anticipate their departments will be based on their 6 months of data. We'll be getting those back from departments in mid-August. So when we provide the information from the budget, we should have better information that we can provide to you on our expenditure projections for this year. Based on the information I've seen and from our HR manager, I know that we will have savings due to vacancies across multiple departments. So I think that this report is probably more conservative, and we likely will have additional savings on the expenditure side that will help us with our bottom line for the general fund. Looking at the revenue side, generally revenues have appeared to be strong. Some of our largest sources of revenue, such as property tax and state aids, those amounts are set when our budget is put together. So we know what those amounts are going to be. But based on what we've seen so far to date, things like building permit revenue, ambulance revenue, those appear to be tracking well compared to the budget. Looking at some of our fee revenues, recreation, senior trips, engineering review fees, those are trending a bit high. Likewise, we have some additional miscellaneous revenues coming in. So in putting this together, we would anticipate that across most of those revenues that we will have some additional revenues compared to budget. And on the expenditure side, that we should have some savings. So it's early in the year to provide a particular number, but it looks like we're heading towards having a small, reasonable surplus at the end of the year. And again, we'll have better information in another month or month and a half when we start to get the budget information prepared for you. One thing I do want to explain, because it looks a little strange on the report, is we do have a line under the last item under revenues and under expenditures. It's under other financing sources, fund balance applied, and it's showing this negative 500,000. That is associated with an emergency contingency that we've budgeted. That's something we've built into our budgets for several years. It's normally not something that's intended to be spent. The funding source is use of fund balance. So if we did need to use that emergency contingency, we would be drawing down our fund balance to do so. The one time that the city has tapped into that was the year that there was the flooding in 2018, when the council authorized the use of the emergency contingency. And we did have a one-year drawdown in our fund balance that was then replenished in the subsequent years. For purposes of this projection, I'm anticipating that we are not going to be using that emergency contingency, and therefore I am not showing that fund balance applied. So there's a corresponding negative 500,000 under both revenues and expenditures. They offset, but that's the reason why that's showing up there. That's all I have at this point, unless there are any specific questions that I can address.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for Bill? All right, hearing none, I'll say thanks again for walking us through that. And since we have come to the end of our agenda, we stand adjourned.